It's beginning to look a lot like Batman.
He can't turn
Everywhere
his
you
head.
go. I think that's should be the new Christmas tradition. Is just make all the Christmas songs about Batman. Replace the word Christmas with Batman.
Like Jingle Bells? What would that sound like if you made Jingle Bells about
what
Batman?
would Jingle Bells sound like if it were about Batman instead?
Yeah.
Actually, no. I actually want to do this bit for real though. Like my favorite would probably be so this is Batman. And what have we done? That'd be a good one.
Simply having a wonderful Batman.
Batman time.
The Batman's up. The Batman's here. It only comes this time of year. Hey,
look, do you want to continue this bit after the intro?
Has this whole part for the intro? I assume that you split. At some point, you cut away.
No, we gotta say our names first. Hi, my name is Jackson
intro.
McMurray.
My name is Adeline McMurray.
And here's the intro. This is where it goes.
And may we present to you the rest of the podcast.
Anyway, you know what I'm thinking?
It only goes downhill from here.
I'm dreaming of a white Batman. That's the one we'll pull out like 15 years from now when they cast fucking Michael B. Jordan or something. And I'm very mad about it because Batman should be white as God intended.
Just like Santa Claus.
Just like Santa Claus. And Jesus also.
And who else? Who else should be white?
Pretty much everybody, I think.
Bill Clinton.
Like, I can't think of anybody who shouldn't be white, right?
Hitler.
No, Hitler should be white, I think.
Yeah, no, I'm naming people who should be white.
Should be white. I don't know how I feel about this bit.
We can cut this bit out. I don't like this bit.
Anyway, one more. We gotta get one more good one.
Kevin from school.
I saw 3 ships come sailing in on Batman Day, on Batman Day.
A bad one.
No, it's a good one. That one's the best one so far, I think.
Sailing in on Batman is good. Or like the Batmobile.
On Batman Day in the morning.
In Batman.
I'll be home for Batman.
Only in your dreams.
If only in my dreams. That's the best one yet, I think.
So
hey, so Adeline, speaking of Christmas and Batman.
Yeah, both of those things.
What movie did we watch today?
We watched Batman Returns, which is the second of the Michael Keaton Batman of the Tim Burton.
Number 2.
Of the
there
Tim
were only
Burton
2 of them.
Listen, I cannot tell the Batman movies apart.
That's fair enough.
If you just tell me a Batman title, I'm like, which one is that? When you tell me what happens, I'll be like, oh, it's that one. But if you just do you want to watch Batman Begins? I'm like, which one is that?
Yeah, no, and to be fair, every Batman movie has a horrible naming convention.
Oh, I'm
right?
the worst.
Because we go Batman, Batman Returns, Batman Forever, Batman and Robin. Then we go Batman Begins, The Dark Knight, and then The Dark Knight Rises.
Yes.
That trilogy. That's the worst. That's the one that really rubs me the wrong way. Is they decided to just take a really abrupt left turn about halfway through that series of 3 movies.
They're just like, you know what? Never mind. Something else now.
Yeah. Was there something you were about to say that I interrupted you?
No.
Okay, cool. So Batman Returns. Okay, Adeline, where were you? Do you remember when you found out that Tim Burton made a Batman movie?
I got a book about Tim Burton, and it had all those movies. It's got the production stuff in it, and it was Batman, directed by Tim Burton, and I had already seen the movie, but it just hadn't sunk in that he had directed it. And as soon as the book was hey, he directed that, I was like, oh, that makes a lot of sense, actually.
Because I was going to say, I think everybody as a kid, at least who's our age, sorry, let me take off my jacket real quick. I'm going to really dig into it.
Great.
I feel like everybody who's kind of our age, like, knows and is, like, really into Tim Burton at age, like, 10 or so.
Yeah.
And then
or,
at some point,
like 13
when you,
or whatever.
and at some point when you ask your parents about it, they casually mention that they liked Batman, maybe, and you're like, your little brain explodes. You're like, what? Timothy made a Batman movie? And it just never quite really lives up to what you're expecting, I think.
Yeah, because when you're like Batman, or when you're like Batman directs a Tim Burton movie, when you're like Tim Burton directs a Batman movie, you're like, oh, we're gonna get like super like kind of like cool and like twisted and like kind of like taking on like social norms with like that really cool like Tim Burton aesthetic, and we like kind of get it. But he also kind of don't get
wait a minute. Did we just watch the same movie? Because that's exactly what Batman Returns is.
No, don't get me wrong. It's very, very, very Tim Burton-y.
It's
don't
the
get me
most
wrong.
Tim Burton.
Yeah. I guess I say it's not all the way Tim Burton-y because I think it's a little bit bad.
Okay. But yeah, so like Tim Burton made the first Batman. After he made Pee-wee's Big Adventure, he was, like, in pre-production on Beetlejuice.
Yeah.
So, like, literally he'd only made one movie that was pretty good, and that was Pee-wee's Big Adventure.
Yeah, okay, but who saw Pee-wee's Big Adventure and was like, I know who I want to get to direct
He's the Batman guy. Yeah, I know. But, so he got on Batman, and apparently he just hated it. Like, the whole thing, because it was, like, a project that was, like, in development for a really long time that he, like, joined kind of late, you know?
Yeah.
So it's like, you know, he left his mark on it, but it wasn't like entirely his thing, and like there was a lot of stuff that he couldn't. There's a really famous story of the scene at the end of Batman where they're going up in the clock tower and he's trying to direct Jack Nicholson, and he's like, okay, Jack, I need you to run up to the top of the clock tower. And Jack Nicholson's like, why? And he's just like, I don't fucking know. Just do it, Jack. Just, like, famously, he didn't have an answer. He was just like, I don't know. Just go up there, please.
See, God, the first Batman movie makes me so upset because Jack Nicholson is the Joker, should be the coolest goddamn thing on the planet. And it's never as cool as you want it to be.
I was gonna say, do you know the famous thing that Jack Nicholson said while he was, like, doing his makeup on the first day on set?
What?
It was like him and Michael Keaton were like chilling out in their like makeup zone, like getting their stuff all done. And he like looks over at him and he's like, this is my Jack Nicholson impression. This is great. We don't have to act at all. That is like famously was his whole stance on the whole thing.
Wow.
Which I think is so funny.
I mean, I do people like Michael Keaton as Batman?
Yeah. I mean, so here's something I'm going to be bringing to the table to this discussion. I recently read Glenn Weldon's book about Batman.
Yeah.
So I've got a lot of like contextual Batman knowledge to drop on y'all today.
And I don't have any. I'm just here with my opinions and that's it.
But like, I mean, you know, obviously both of these Batman movies were like huge successes.
Yeah, of course.
And the thing I was trying to say earlier was that, like, the first Batman movie wasn't really Tim Burton's whole deal. He was just kind of attached to it.
Yeah.
But then, like, and then he was like, okay, that fucking sucked. I never want to do that ever again. And then Warner Brothers was like, what if we just let you go fucking crazy on the sequel? He's like, okay.
No.
Okay. I'll hang around if I get to just go fucking buck wild on this one. But yeah, so the book is all about, like, the relationship between Batman media and Batman fans and how, like, you know, even, like, obviously still to this day, but, like, even as far back as, like, the 50s, there's always been this dissonance between, like, what, like, hardcore, diehard Batman fans want out of things versus what they're actually being delivered on.
Uh-huh.
Because, like, in the olden days, Batman was, like, this really gritty, like, hard-boiled noir detective kind of dealy.
Yeah.
And people were like, oh, we like this. It's kind of tough and... in a comic book in the 30s, it feels kind of fun and edgy, you know, and that's what we're kind of into about it. And then eventually when you start getting into like the early 50s, Batman just starts doing all the exact same things that Superman does.
Yep.
And that just like super doesn't work because like Superman has always been like really goofy and fun, and Batman's like, oh, now I have a dog too.
Yeah.
And
Well, because Superman, I've talked about how much I hate Superman's character, because he's just like, I'm impervious to all damage, and I'm going to go kick a bad guy now. Hee-yah. Right. And it's like,
well, that's not even what I mean. I just mean that, like,
Superman.
They're doing, like, crazy, wild things where they're just like, oh, check it out. Here's the Superman story where he fucking, there's an alien and he turns him and all his friends into cows or some shit. I don't know. It's the 40s. Who gives a shit?
It's the 40s. We don't have to do anything.
Exactly. And so, like, Batman originally was like this detective, but then they, like, started to try to integrate them into being sort of the same brand. So now it's like, oh, check it out. Batman's got this weird little imaginary friend or something. And everyone was like, okay, we hate this.
What year did they, like, incorporate, like, the first, like, Robin?
That was early on. That was, like... So they did Detective Comics for a while, which was like the original thing, and then eventually the like first like quote unquote Batman series started in like 1940 something, and that was Batman and Robin. That was like the first appearance of Robin.
Oh, gotcha.
And so like from then on, it was like Batman and Robin was always the thing, and people that wasn't quite the point where people started to get disillusioned about it because they were still pretty much on board. It was just kind of like a different story dynamic, you know. He was like also
I know,
raising
like,
this kid.
Yeah, I know, like, the original... I know there were a lot of people that were upset with Robin when they first came up, because it was, like, kind of the same thing. Like, we have this gritty detective, and now there's just, like, this little kid. And, of course, it introduced, like, cooler things. Like, oh, you've got this tough guy, and now he's got to raise a kid. But I know that was, like, a controversy at some point.
Yeah. But what I'm getting to is eventually... around the 60s, there was like a turnaround in the comics. People were like, okay. So people don't like this just whole Batman trying to do Superman shit thing. They want Batman to like sort of be his own thing and kind of be tougher and more action-packed, you know?
More gritty and dark.
So, and and I wish I had read this more recently because I wish I could cite more of the names of the creators. I just don't know them off the top of my head. But eventually there's this great run in the 60s that sort of like brought back the Joker, who hadn't been a thing for a really long time. Like, they introduced him in the 40s, and then he just kind of wasn't a thing for, like, 15 years, and then the 60s, they were like, no, check out this guy, he's cool. It's like that famous story where, like, he, like, poisons the water supply, and the fish all get, like, creepy Joker smiles, you know that one?
Yeah.
But anyway, so now all the comic book fans are like, oh, yeah, check it out, Batman, he's cool again. And we're all really excited about it. And then, as if on cue, Adam West's TV show, Batman, comes out, and everyone is furious about it. I mean, look, everyone's not furious about it. Hardcore comic book people are furious about it. The culture at large eats that like, shit up. Yeah. But yeah, it's just sort of the start of this, like, dissonance between, like, the hardcore, like, Batman fans and like the culture at large who's ingesting Batman content, and like the difference between those tastes and sensibilities, and how constantly, like, alternatingly completely ignored and completely being pandered to the like hardcore diehard Batman people are.
I honestly think that like demographic of like hardcore Batman people, like I honestly think whatever they think that Batman is honestly just like a fantasy that they've created out of the media that they do like, without understanding that there's so much more other media. So every time someone like that like points at a piece of Batman media and is like, this sucks, this is way out of character for Batman, Batman's supposed to be like this, I'm always like, well, Batman could be like however the fuck we want Batman to be like, because he's a comic book character, and that's kind of the point of a comic book character. You
should read the book, Adeline. It's very good. It's called The Caped Crusade by Glenn Weldon, and it's a super duper good book. But the thing, and that was sort of a few years ago. Grant Morrison was writing Batman, and that was like his whole take was like, oh, I'm gonna write Batman as if every Batman story actually happened to this Batman chronologically the way it happened in comic books. There was like this whole thing, because, you know, like comic books, it's like selective continuity and you craft the character however you kind of want to. But Grant Morrison was like, no, I'm going to have him like have these crazy flashbacks to like the 50s when everything was wacky and crazy. And then also have flashbacks to the 90s where it's like still him, still the same canon character in my story doing crazy 90s shit.
Dude, where he's like cutting people's heads off or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, whatever crazy batshit wild stuff was happening. But he's like, that's my take. It's like they're all the same guy. He's just been through a lot of shit and done a lot of different things in his life.
Is
and,
it good?
Like, it's all people. I mean, I don't know. It's divisive, obviously, because
it's a comic book.
yeah, but like, but it's something that Glenn Weldon talks a lot about in that book. Is that run where he's like, all of this is Batman. Like, it all like comes together to become this like cultural miasma of what the general platonic ideal of Batman is. It's like everything at once, you know.
Yeah, that's cool.
And then. Yeah, I don't know. I don't want to just only talk about that book the whole time.
Yeah, that's what I liked about Lego Batman, to bring up a less serious piece of Batman media.
No, totally, yeah.
But they kind of make that joke with Lego Batman, because it's Lego Batman, so it is kind of like that. It's like whatever the pop culture thinks that Batman is, that's kind of what Lego Batman is. Mm-hmm. And so, of course, Butler Man, what's his name?
Alfred?
Why could I remember that?
Can you get it together? Did you just wake up? Are you okay?
No, I'm just like, okay, first of all, it's my first day of winter break. I slept until noon. I'm still, like, mostly sick, and I'm, like, high on Dayquil right now, so don't step to me. But but Alfred has that joke where he's like, do you remember your 60s phase? And just, like, stuff like that. That, like, make the Lego Batman seem, like, really, like, kind of fleshed out and a representation of just like what would a little kid playing with a Batman Lego think that Batman is? Right, yeah. And that brings us to sort of the Tim Burton Batman, in which people, like hardcore comic book people, there wasn't like a huge backlash against the original one. Mm-hmm. They were after all the like mainstream media shit with all the Adam West stuff, they were just like, fine. Okay, this is good enough, I guess. Yeah. Like, it's like, I mean, in fairness, it's not at all a Batman movie, really. Like, they're just like, oh, here's Batman, and like his parents died or whatever, but we're gonna pull all this shit where it's like, oh, and the Joker killed his parents, and like, it's like ideologically, there's not really much in common with like an actual Batman story. With the devil in the pale moonlight. But like, just in general, people were like, okay, fine. It's better than nothing. But like, yeah, and I don't know, and you always hear that story of like Tim Burton going around behind the scenes of the Batman movie with fucking Dark Knight Returns. Have you seen like the panels and stuff from Dark Knight Returns? No. So, do you know the famous comic book panel where Batman is in that, like, armored suit and kicking Superman in the jaw, and he says, like, I want you to know in your most private moments that I defeated you? Yeah. That's Dark Knight Returns. So, like, picture that art style. That's, like, what the whole book looks like. Yeah. It's, like, everyone's just, like, huge and muscular, and everything's, like, dark, and it's, like, really thinly lined, you know? Yeah. Is it like, bad comic book muscle boys? No. Or is it, like, good comic book muscle boys? Well, it's sort of... So, Dark Knight Returns was, like... I'm just gonna go off about Batman in this episode. Totally I'm sorry. Dark Knight Returns was, like, the seminal... It's, like, the first, like, really serious superhero comic book. I mean, obviously saying that is kind of an oversimplification, but like, yeah. If you're gonna like cut and dry it, like Dark Knight Returns is Frank Miller, he wrote it and he drew it, was like the first time that people took a superhero character and just took it like so seriously, and like told this story that was like dealing with like really political themes. And it came out in the 80s, so it was kind of about nuclear warfare and, like, the Cold War, and, like, it had this, like, really, really dark and cynical take on, like, gang violence and stuff, and it was, like, really grim and really serious, and it's, like, it's good. It's a great comic book. It was, like, 1984, I think. And at around the same time, Alan Moore wrote Watchmen, and then The Killing Joke around that same time, and then Frank Miller went on to do Batman Year One, and those comic books as sort of a quartet of stories were sort of the thing that propelled the comic books forward from the 80s into being sort of like something that the writers are like taking a little bit more seriously and a little more, I don't know, sincerely, I guess. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, Dark Knight Returns, it's like, it's making a really definitive style choice, right? To make everybody look so huge and bulky, and it's sort of a
it's sort of a thematic idea, right? Because Batman is like huge, but he's like kind of an old man. He's like 50 years old in this story.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like the Kingpin. He's just like this huge bulked up guy, but he's not like quite as agile or like fast or stealthy as he used to be. So it's like, it's related to the whole idea of what's going on in the story. But that is sort of what kicks off the like 80s and 90s giant veiny muscle bound superhero craze, was how into Dark Knight Returns everybody was.
Yeah, I just looked up the cover to kind of like get the art style idea, and it's just like he's just like huge and his shirt's all ripped open and he's got like a weird busted up face.
Right. And it's interesting because it's not like fetishy giant muscle veininess. It's just like a really distinct style and a really distinct take on it, you know?
Yeah. Everybody's very like square.
Exactly. And it's, I don't know, it's a cool comic book. But yeah, what I was saying was, like, famously Tim Burton like had that comic book around with him when he was making the movie. It was like, you guys make it look like this. And it's so funny because it couldn't look less like that.
Well, that just shows you that everyone was like, no.
No, yeah, sorry, Tim. That's not gonna work. Anyway. Batman Returns. So, this is the sequel where Tim Burton just decides to go apeshit.
Decides to just make a Tim Burton movie.
Yeah. It's like... And this movie cracks me up because one of the bigger stories around it is the fact that, like, it was, like, huge with, like, parent groups at the time when it came out because it was, like, kind of a family blockbuster, you know?
Yeah.
But, like, the Penguin was so grotesque and scary and Catwoman was so, like, overtly sexual that all the parent groups were like, no. This is the death of culture. We can't have this.
Man.
That was like, it seems like that doesn't really happen quite as much anymore.
I just saw an article that said 1 Million Moms, like, it's a group called 1 Million Moms. I don't know if there's actually 1 million moms, but they're boycotting Hallmark because they had a commercial with the lesbians kissing in it. So I think maybe that does happen, but just about stupid stuff.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing. It's like, that's what it is now, is it's all about, like, LGBT stuff.
Yeah.
But it's... like, it's not quite the same, though, because it's not, like, a part of our, like, general cultural conversation, you know?
Yeah.
It seems like in the 90s with the, like, violent video games thing really coming up and that being, like, a huge legal issue for so long and people going crazy over it, I feel like there was just a bigger culture of, like, people being really, really concerned about what kind of media people were making that kids might see.
Yeah.
And I feel like I know obviously it does still happen and we're still having the violent video games debate and there's people like 1 Million Moms, but it's like a smaller, more specific sect of the world. Does that make sense?
Well, yeah, it's not just like this movie's too violent or too sexual and now it's like there's a specific thing that we do not like and that's what they're boycotting. It's not just... like, yeah, because that was always the thing with blockbusters. I mean, that was the thing with, like, Indiana Jones, where they're like, this is too violent, so violent that we need to make PG-13 a thing.
Right.
And yeah,
so,
I forgot what my point was.
So you expressed your distaste for this film.
Okay, I don't put words in my mouth. I don't not like it. It's just, I don't know what the movie's trying to do a lot of the time. I feel like this movie gets a little lost in the Tim Burton sauce sometimes. So much that it forgets what it's doing. Like, for the first 3/4 of this movie, I don't know why Selina's here, what her motivation is, or what she's doing.
Wait, for real?
Yeah.
You weren't, like, at all affected by Catwoman's, like, whole, like, arc and, like, transformation going through this?
I liked her at the end. The whole 3/4 of the movie, I had no idea what her motivation was. So, she gets killed. She gets killed by a guy. And she goes home, and she's a cat lady now. She goes and she wrecks up her house because she, like, hated her old life, and she hated who she was, and now the world saw her and all that stuff. And she gets super sexy because that's the only way that you can be free as a woman is to be super sexy. And then she stops a mugging. Great. And then she beats up Batman for no reason. And then she goes to the Penguin and she's like, hey, I want you to not kill the Batman. I just want you to frame the Batman so that he's like out of the picture because I'm mad at him because he beat me up. And then the Penguin kills that lady, and then she's like, oh no. And then she gets killed again.
Okay.
And then she wants to kill Max. And that's the part that I like, where she's like...
No, that she always wants to do that.
But then what? No!
Okay.
That's not her motivation until like the last quarter of the movie. And that motivation I really like. The rest of the movie, I just don't know what she's doing.
Okay. To me, I think the Catwoman stuff is the stuff that works the absolute best in this movie. Because it is, like, at least to me, much like a lot of movies that came out before I was born, it took me, like, probably 2 or 3 times seeing this movie before I really, like, dialed into it and was like, oh, I get it now. Not that I necessarily, like, could say what it is that I got, but I just, like... was able to dial in. Yeah, just was able to dial in on the exact frequency it's working on and just, like, accept it, you know, and being like, oh, okay, actually, yeah, this does rule. Kind of like how I was with Terminator, how it took me a few times before I was like, oh, fuck yeah, this is great. But, like, to me, it's just, like, the whole bit where it's, like, she is clearly, like, deeply unhappy and deeply, like, objectified and, like, not going anywhere with her job and hates the way that everybody around her looks at her and hates herself so much.
Yeah.
Like, so over the top crazy. And then, like, something happens and she gets killed by her boss and she dies and then inexplicably comes back to life and is just like, you know what? Fuck everything. Like, I don't care about anything. Yeah, I like that. I really do anymore. Like
the scene where she's wrecking her whole apartment. I love that scene.
Yeah, it rules. It rules. It's so good. And I feel, I don't know, I just feel for Selena Kyle so, like, viscerally in those sequences where she's just like, you know what? Like, I don't give a shit anymore. I don't give a fuck anymore. Yeah. Like, I just died. And I don't know if I can anymore. I don't know if I can do that again, but, like... I'm not going to keep doing this anymore. I'm just going to do whatever the fuck I want to. And whatever the fuck I want to is just like, just messing with Max Schreck's whole shit as much as I can. I want to kill him. I want to burn down his department stores. I want to make him think he's going insane. Just everything.
I guess I didn't get that. I understood that she was like, as soon as she like turns into Catwoman, I'm like, okay, cool. We're going to like do something. And then we don't do anything for a little bit in the movie. Like, she gets the Catwoman suit, she stops that mugging, and she says, you're so pathetic waiting for the Batman. I'm the Catwoman. And then she backflips away because she backflips everywhere. And she blows up that department store. And I get that that's kind of like a rebellion against Max. But then she doesn't do anything to Max until the end of the movie where she tries to kill him, you know? And there's that stupid fucking shot where Batman and the Penguin are just kind of like chill, like having that weird conversation where he's like, what are you doing standing here? He's like, oh, you know, upstanding mayor stuff. And he's like, you're not the mayor. And then the Catwoman just backflips across the street and lands in front of them and goes... whatever, meow, and then the department store explodes, and then she just fucking leaves.
Yeah, I know, that's why this movie rules.
Why is that? I was like, what the fuck are we doing, Tim?
She's just like an anarchist, Adeline. That's the whole point. She doesn't have a direction. She's just like, I'm gonna fuck. She's Tyler Durden. She's just like, I'm gonna fuck shit up.
She's not being an anarchist enough, because all she does is blow up a building, and then she goes and makes a deal with Cobblepot and eats a bird. Like, that's not anarchist enough for me. It's the fact that she
blows up 2 different department stores.
I thought she only blew up one. I may be combining scenes in my head. Either way. But then, I think I don't like it because then she goes back to work and back to, like, being her old self that she hated, which makes me think that she hasn't lost it completely.
Well, she's just going back to mess with Shrek. She's just doing some recon to figure out what the best ways to fuck with him are.
But she doesn't. We just see her and she's like, oh, yesterday was a blur. And he's like, haha, okay, that's weird. Can you escort him out? And she's like, okay. And then she does.
No, she's trying to freak him out because he knows that she could have the dirt on him, and she's just showing up and being like, hey, what's up? I'm alive. Doesn't that scare the shit out of you, Shrek?
But then she doesn't do anything with that.
Yes, she does! She blows up 2 of his stores and tries to kill him!
But she doesn't try to kill him until the end of the movie. I guess the whole thing
Why do you want her to kill him so early?
Well, I just want us to have the conversation of what she's trying to accomplish, because it feels like for most of the movie she's not really trying to accomplish anything.
She wants to accomplish blowing shit up and making a big mess. She wants to make a big mess.
She goes up to Batman, and Batman and her get in a fight for literally no reason. There's no reason
because she
for
blew up a
fighting.
Department store.
But she attacks Batman for no reason.
That's not even true. They get in a fight because Batman's like, oh shit, you just blew up a department store. You're gonna go to jail now because you blew up a department store.
Whatever.
The very opening shot of this is Pee Wee Herman and some other woman who, maybe I should look it up. She might be another like character actress that I'm not familiar with.
Doesn't she play the mom in Beetlejuice? Is that a different actress?
Hold on.
They look very similar.
Batman Returns. I'm constantly bummed out that Pee Wee Herman never really got to have like more of an acting career.
Yeah, I mean,
because he's always so good in everything he's in.
Really only in like Tim Burton movies, yeah.
Yeah. Diane Salinger was in Pee-wee's Big Adventure. Not the main girl, but like the girl that Pee-wee meets at the restaurant and hangs out in the dinosaur mouth with in Pee-wee's Big Adventure.
That makes sense.
That's the Penguin's mom. So yeah, it's the two of them. The two of them, they got married, Pee-wee and the girl from the dinosaur mouth, and then they had a gross, ugly baby.
Yeah.
And threw it in a river.
That's all we need to know. Why did they have a gross, weird baby? Doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter. And that's what I like about this movie so much now, is that they just don't... This movie doesn't give a fuck. Like, they're just like, yeah, it's a crazy, gross baby. They try to kill him, but it doesn't work. And then he goes in the sewer and there's penguins there because that's just the world we've chosen to create for this movie.
Yeah, because there's just this fucking abandoned zoo in Gotham. But there are still penguins in the abandoned zoo, and that abandoned zoo is also connected to the sewer. Stop asking questions.
Yeah, it rules. It rules. And one of the things I wrote down was just that, like, if this movie came out today, like, shitty comic book opinion people on Twitter would hate this movie. Because, like... It's so... I mean, because the whole, like, penguin as a gross, deformed monster is, like, totally this movie's own invention, and Catwoman, like, having these weird supernatural powers and being a weird zombie is totally this movie's invention. Like, they're totally just doing their own thing with all these characters. And, like, on top of that, it's also just so... Like, it's just so the opposite of, like, the CinemaSins mentality, right? It's almost like they're going out of their way to not explain things to you. And I think between those two things, like, shitty men on the internet would just have a field day with this thing.
Well, I just think it's because Tim Burton going from the first movie, where he basically wasn't in charge and people, like, telling him what to do, to the second movie where he's in charge, and they're like, hey, do you want to make it like the comic books? He's like, fuck no. I want to do my own goddamn thing. Yeah.
And it's just like, yeah, I don't know. And I think that, like, people like that who are, like, very much set on, who have, like, really strong opinions about which Star Wars movies and which superhero movies are the worst and what's wrong with everything, they just, like, it seems like what they want is they just want to feel like they're in the know all the time.
Yeah.
Because it makes them feel smart and powerful to feel like they're in on what's going on in this movie when it's based on something they like, right?
I mean, it's kind of just like another form of gatekeeping, where they're like, I've read all the comic books. You haven't read all the comic books? Well, that's why this is bad, because it doesn't... I know all the information, and it doesn't use all the information.
Yeah,
like that kind
you guys only enjoyed it because you don't know the source material like I do. If you did, you would be better like me, and you would not like it. Yeah. And I feel like this movie is just totally, like, you are totally out of your league no matter how much preparation you've done going into this movie. Like, nothing could have prepared you for this.
I I do think it's weird how little Batman is actually, like,
I
in
know.
this movie.
And that was the next thing I was going to say is, like, so Batman shows up for that, like, fight scene at the beginning and has practically, like, no lines of dialogue. He just, like, shows up and punches some people.
And then just fucking stares at Selena for, like, 2 whole seconds.
And then he's just, like, not in the movie until, like, literally 45 minutes into it after that, which is just crazy.
Who is the actor that plays Maximilian? Shrek.
Oh, Christopher Walken.
Christopher Walken. How old was Christopher Walken when he made this movie, and how old is the character supposed to be?
I don't know. He's probably like 40.
He looks like a 20-year-old in old age makeup, and I hate it.
He just looks like a gross Tim Burton person.
They keep putting him next to his quote-unquote son, who's like the same age as him, and the only reason that he's the old man dad character is because he's got this stupid Beethoven wig on, and it's just...
Yeah, Adeline, it rules. I'm trying to look at how old he was. Well, he got married in 1969, so he's at least 30 in this movie.
Okay, yeah. He looks like a 20-year-old in old age makeup. That's all I'm saying.
I just think that's the, like, makeup-y Tim Burton aesthetic on him. He's just, like, caked out in makeup, and it's not because they're trying to hide anything. It's just because that's what Tim Burton wants him to look like, you know?
No, I'm literally talking about, like, he's obviously supposed to be, like, an older character, and they keep putting him next to his son, who's, like, the same age as him. Right. And it's just, it's not bad. It's just, it's funny.
There's this line reading I love right near the beginning when Alfred is walking through the streets, and there's this, like, newsie he's calling out, and he's just like, "Hey, read about the possible terror beneath our feet. Check it out." I think it's so funny.
What? Are newsies still a thing?
Absolutely not.
Okay, great. Just
this
checking.
Movie came out in 91.
Okay, just checking. It really feels like an 80s film, and I can't put why.
I mean, yeah, the first Batman movie was 89, and this one was 92.
Honestly, it just feels like that kind of criticism of capitalism that we got a lot in the 80s.
Right.
Like, it just feels absolutely like that kind of story.
It's like in the RoboCop vein.
Yeah, like, it makes sense coming out of the 80s. That's probably why I'm like, oh, the 80s.
Right. Okay, here's something that I think has been lost from Batman culture that we need to bring back.
What?
Every villain should have, like, a copious... What's the word I'm looking for? Every villain should have just, like, an inexhaustible supply of nameless goons.
Yeah.
That just flip around and wear funny costumes.
And just kind of, like, dance around the street and push some people over and just run around in circles, yeah.
That used to be a tent pole of Batmanology. And I feel like we've lost that. I think Christopher Nolan ruined that for everybody. When I make my Batman movie, I'm going to bring back the anonymous goons.
Well, the whole thing... What's the Batman game that we have for the Wii U? What is that one?
The Arkham games.
The Batman... I think we have Arkham Asylum. Or Arkham Oranges. I can't remember. But whatever the game is, the whole thing is that, like, you're in, like, the prison part of Gotham that whoever the fuck is made. But there is literally, it's just like every villain's got a whole pack of goons, and there's just literally 10 billion of them, and they're like, go beat the shit out of some goons, Batman.
Yeah, we need more goons. This is not normal. We need more goons.
I just think, I do kind of like at the beginning, it's kind of a throwaway line, but when there's that first, like, attack at the tree lighting, and someone goes, it's like, oh, the clown gang is back, because it's like, oh, the Joker's back, even though the Joker's dead. And then they're like, no, it's not. And it's like, okay.
I think sort of the implication is, like, these guys all used to be Joker's goons, but the Penguin, like, hired them. Like,
well, no, because the Joker was a part of the circus when he was a kid. That's the whole thing. And he ate some kids.
Oh, maybe.
That's because...
whatever.
Batman's in his basement. He's reading those old newspapers about the fish boy that ate some kids and then disappeared before the police could question him.
Yeah, no, because for some reason that's Danny DeVito's whole thing in this movie is he just wants to kill a bunch of babies.
Yeah.
And there's not really a solid motivation for that, but that's just what he wants to do.
Yeah. Hold on, Danny DeVito doesn't want to kill babies. The Penguin wants to kill babies.
Yeah. It's just, I don't know, it's so good.
See, how I feel about Michael Keaton Batman is how I feel about Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man. They play, like, Michael Keaton plays Bruce Wayne, I think super good, but he's just got a little bit too much dad energy that when he turns into Batman, he's just, like, not scary. And it doesn't help that he can't turn his head and that he's wearing so much eye makeup on under the mask. Like, it's just like too many factors converging where I'm like, Batman, you look like such a doofus right now.
I was gonna say, there's the shot near the end that's so good where he's like in the cowl and he's got like those thick rings of like eye makeup around so his eyes are all blacked out, and then he like peels the mask off and he's suddenly not wearing any makeup at all underneath.
And he's still got that thick ass rubber like up to his face.
That's so great.
Uncomfortable.
But yeah, no, this costume's the worst. That's like one of the things that Tim Burton hated the most about working on both of these movies was that like he basically couldn't do any action sequences in earnest, right?
Yeah.
Because Michael Keaton can't move. So, and if you'll notice if you're looking for it in both of these movies, the way that the fight scenes are edited, you never get a 2-shot of anything. Mm-hmm. It's just like, okay, I'll get like a shot of like Michael Keaton's like fist kind of coming through the frame, and then like a reverse shot of like the guy getting punched, but you never see like Batman's full body like doing a whole move at any point, because literally they just have to like film a whole bunch of like little tiny snippets that kind of give the illusion of motion in order to make it work, because Michael Keaton straight up is in like a prison. He's in a tomb. So like, why?
Who designed that costume?
He's been frozen in carbonite and is expected to star in a multi-million-dollar franchise.
Yeah. They're just like, here, fucking figure it out.
But yeah, so like,
do you think that Michael Keaton heard about how Robert Downey Jr. was like, hey, you got to make the Iron Man suit smaller so I could do more stuff and just have more of it be animated? And they were like, okay. Do you think he heard that and was just like, what the fuck?
Fuck, I could have done that?
You could have done that?
I could have just asked.
It could have just been like, hey, I'm Michael Keaton. Don't force me into this prison. Don't Cask of Amontillado me into this Batman suit.
The suit's the worst. It's horrible. And it doesn't even look good. It's not like it's super cool, but it's really restrictive. It just looks weirdly rubbery and bad.
It looks like it was the first time that anyone ever had to actually make a Batman suit. And it's not that, but that's what it looks like.
I also, and the moment, this is just around the time in my notes where we get to the whole like Catwoman freak out section. Which is so good. Where she just goes through a house and starts like spraying spray paint on shit and like thrashing things, and there's that crazy shot where they show you just the shot of a bed and then like a giant spray can comes out and starts spraying on it, and you zoom out and it's like her dollhouse she still has, I guess.
Yeah.
And she's like putting stuffed animals down the garbage disposal and shit. It's so good. And her big neon sign that says hello there. It turns into
hell here.
Hell here. It's great. It's the best. Okay, so this is another point I want to bring up. That is obviously, if we're talking about fan backlash over Batman stuff, like the Joel Schumacher movies are like the epitome of this, right? It's like the most hated, most like universally loathed piece of Batman content ever are the two Joel Schumacher Batman movies.
Yeah, we love those.
We do. Like, genuinely, I mean, I think now that I'm sort of revisiting these Tim Burton Batman movies and starting to like them a little bit more, I still think I like them better than the Schumacher ones. Because the Schumacher ones...
I like the Schumacher ones because I feel like it's kind of like... It's kind of got the same mindset of like, we're gonna do what the fuck we want. And what the fuck we want to do is basically just do like Adam West, but like a little bit gritty. Like I like it. Like we're just gonna make a fucking comic book movie, and y'all y'all neckbeard super serious nerds could just get over it. Right.
Well, and that's the thing is that like it's so funny because
like George Clooney's gonna be Batman, and you're gonna fucking deal with it.
But like according to Glenn Weldon in the book, basically the reason he got to make two of them was like Joel Schumacher is just great at making movies, so he made the first one and he made it like under time and under budget, and the studio was like, oh shit, for real? Like that rules.
Do another one.
Everyone hated it and they were like, We still want you to make the fourth one, though, because you did, like, spend hardly any money actually making this movie. We thought you would, so you can just go ahead and do another one if that's cool.
Yeah.
Which is so good.
It's like when you're, like, really responsible in class all year long, and so when you're like, hey, can I leave? The teacher's like, yeah, go for it, man.
Right. But that's the thing I was going to say, is, like, that's, like, what people hate about it, is how, like, over the top and campy and ridiculous it is. But, like, honestly, if those two movies are like a 10, this movie's like an 8.5. It's like not even really that different from the Joel Schumacher Batman movies, if you ask me. Just in terms of like the amount of shit they're throwing at you at any given point and how like wild and elevated it all is.
Yeah. I guess my one criticism of this movie is that I do wish that it was a little bit more colorful. Like,
right.
I feel like, I know that Tim Burton likes to play around with the black and white aesthetic, but whenever he does that in a really, like, direct and, like, visually stimulating way. This movie is just really, really gray, and I feel like it could have been more visually appealing in that way with, like, more color. Like, that scene where she's destroying her house and everything is pink, that scene is so cool. And I feel like the rest of the movie is honestly just, like, gray, and it gets kind of boring after a while.
Yeah, and I mean, that's sort of what Joel Schumacher does in the opposite direction. He just blasts you with, like, pink and green at all
He just
times.
fucking commits. He's like, bruh, I don't care. It's gonna be campy as fuck. Everything's gonna be fucking green, and you're gonna deal with it.
Remember when Tommy Lee Jones played Two-Face in that movie?
Don't worry about it.
That
also,
is like
Jim Carrey is the Riddler. Should have been so much better than it was.
I know, but like I can't get over how much of a non-Tommy Lee Jones role that is.
Yeah.
Like, Tommy Lee Jones does one thing, right? He plays a really, really grumpy old white guy. And he does that better than anybody else on planet Earth. And, like, I don't know why you would want him to be in a Joel Schumacher Batman movie. Like, who made that decision?
Honestly, I think they were like, hey, Tommy Lee Jones, do you want to do this? He was like, fucking sure, man.
Okay, so let's talk about Danny DeVito for a minute here.
Oh, Danny DeVito.
He is so good in this. He's
good in this.
The best. And like he looks so like horrible and awful and grotesque, but he's so like funny at the same time.
Yeah. I mean, Danny DeVito is already a short, kind of bigger man, but then on top of that, they definitely have him wearing like some kind of fat suit to like make him that weird like Cobblepot shape, and it's bad to look at, which is good.
Yeah, it's great. And then there's that sequence where he shows up to that like campaign meeting where they're all saying he's gonna be the mayor, and he's like still wearing his like shitty greasy pajamas, like eating a fish. And he's just standing there with like sweat stains in his butt crack, and everyone's like, hooray, you're gonna be mayor.
Yay.
It's so perfect.
This movie lost me. I was like totally on board with everything, and then the Cobblepot loses because there's evidence that he did something really shitty, which, as we've seen, doesn't happen in real life.
But don't you like see the difference is that when we're presenting like the Mueller report, we don't do a little DJ spin on it before we we finish. That's what we've been missing.
Then we would all believe it and be into it.
If somebody was behind the scenes going,
which is not something that you can do with a CD. Just
yes, it is. Shut up. And that's so good too, and like people are mad about the Joel Schumacher movies, but not this movie for some reason.
Yeah,
when Batman does that, like, what's the difference between?
Like it's a record player.
Yeah, what's the difference between Batman doing a little record scratch on the CD and him whipping out his little Batman credit card at the beginning of Batman and Robin?
I know.
Those two things are the same. There's no difference.
There's no difference.
I really like the little bit about Max Schreck's stuffed chihuahua he has in his office.
Yeah, just like real quick.
Comes up
We're not
once
going to bring it up
never
ever again, but you know.
Just a little piece of character development.
I think it's funny because she's like in her apartment and she's like going through messages. It's like, hey, remember it's you. You got to pick up those files for that meeting on Wednesday. And she's like, oh crap, I guess I'll go there. And then she just like hacks into her boss's computer.
I know.
It's like that's not what you went here to do.
And yeah, and then just like the whole deal where like Michelle Pfeiffer just gets brought back to life because a bunch of cats licked her, and for some reason now she like has the actual superhuman ability to regenerate herself 9 times. I guess it's just like there's nothing to even try to explain why that is.
Isn't it just, like, in the Catwoman movie? Doesn't like a cat like breathe magic into her or something? I
do not know. I never seen it.
Specifically have a shot in my head of a cat standing on top of her chest and like breathing like CGI green smoke into her mouth, and I don't know what it's from, but I know it exists.
Are you sure you're not just talking about in this movie when the cat licks her mouth?
No, like specifically it like breathes into her.
Right, okay. But yeah, so yeah, and like we're at this point in the movie and Batman's like basically not in it, right?
Yeah.
And that's what I think is so cool about this, is because this is a movie with like 3 protagonists, basically. Yeah. It's like, it's as much about the Penguin as it is about Catwoman as it is about Batman. If anything, I feel like Batman sort of takes on the role of the antagonist in this movie.
Yeah.
It's like we're clued into like the origins and the beginnings of these other 2 characters. And then Batman just shows up to like kind of stop them and like make things harder for them, you know? We don't have any like interiority or sort of we never see any of the story from Batman's perspective, hardly. Except for a few choice moments. But like the story isn't anchored to any one perspective, though. Like you're seeing everything to everybody from everybody's sort of different view, you know? Yeah. Like it's really even-handedly trying to focus on each of these 3 people as just sort of like these 3 independent agents that are all trying to do their own thing and just getting in each other's way, you know? Which I think is so cool. Like, it's such a weird and interesting format for, like, a superhero movie like this.
Yeah.
You know that the guy who wrote this was the same guy who wrote Heathers?
All right.
And as far as I know, yeah, he has never been a super successful writer, because he wrote Heathers and people were like, oh, that rules.
People love Heathers.
They were like, you want to write Batman? And he's like, yeah, sure, go for it, I'll do that. And then he just kind of never really does a high profile movie ever again.
I mean, does he really need to?
I guess not. I don't know, because it's such a distinct voice, you know? Like even just between those 2 movies, like everything is so like elevated and the dialogue is so like campy and snappy in both of those things, you know? And it feels like there is sort of an auteurist through line between those 2 scripts that like, I don't know, I guess just kind of speaks for itself, you know?
I'm just kind of like jumping around in my head because I didn't take a lot of notes for this movie. I kind of like wrote down my big ideas and then like just let myself remember the rest of the stuff that I wanted to talk about. Mm-hmm. But I think it's funny because like there are certain like points that are like, oh, this is a Tim Burton movie, and it's like one of them is like those long like shots of like going through like the scenery with like that big music playing as we like go through the abandoned zoo. And
totally.
I'm like, oh, it's Tim Burton movie, and it's like
choiry Danny Elfman score.
Yeah, and it's like like women with like really bright hair colors and like really like angular clothing or really like basic female characters like the Ice Princess. I'm like, oh, it's the Tim Burton movie. And it's like some like weird like rubber prosthetic-y kind of thing that's either a puppet or just like a thing, and then you get that guy getting electrocuted at the end of the movie and he moves away the rumble and there's this big like electrified face and you're like,
turns into
it's
Large
a Tim
Marge.
Burton movie.
Yeah,
it's Large Marge. It's the shrunken head from Beetlejuice. It's
so did you know
gaming
Billy D. Williams plays Harvey Dent in the first Batman movie.
Sure.
That's like sort of Tim Burton calling a shot. When he was like working on this script and wanting to do it, he was like, I want to do like 2 or 3 Batman movies. I want to like be attached to this. Mm-hmm. And then he kind of changes his mind once he actually gets into production on it and hates it. But like,
he's like, oh, this sucks.
he was like, I'm calling my shot in this movie. I'm gonna have Billy D. Williams. I keep getting Billy D. Williams and Tommy Lee Jones mixed up in my head.
Just because they both got three names.
Exactly. That I'm gonna have Billy D. Williams. Now I'm just psyching myself out. Billy D. Williams, he's the guy who plays Lando Calrissian. He's gonna be Two-Face because he likes sort of the visual idea of like having a black man play Two-Face, right? Mm-hmm. But then when they do this movie, originally Harvey Dent was gonna be Max Schreck. Yeah. But the studio just didn't want to do that. The like anecdotal thing that people say is because they didn't want to have a black man play Two-Face, but that's not something that's ever been like explicitly corroborated. I don't know.
Yeah.
But the point is they were like, we don't want Harvey Dent in this movie. We don't want it to be Billy D. Williams regardless. But that moment where Catwoman like tases the fuck out of Shrek and like burns his whole shit up was supposed to be the moment originally in which he becomes Two-Face. Yeah. And then like Batman 3, Billy D. Williams would be Two-Face in the third one. Mm-hmm. But because they just didn't want to do that, they were just like, oh, and he died.
He died.
Which I just think is really funny.
Yeah.
There's my favorite bit in this whole movie. So Batman is very skeptical of the Penguin. He's like doing this whole thing where he's like, oh, I'm just this lonely man who wants to find out who his real parents are.
Yeah.
And Batman's like, I don't buy it. I don't buy this guy. He's ugly and I don't trust him.
Fuck you.
Which is basically it, right? Yeah. I mean, he doesn't have any real reason to be mistrustful.
You are too ugly to have feelings.
Yeah.
If I've learned anything from living in Gotham.
Yeah, exactly. But so he's like doing all this research. And there's this sequence where he's in his Batman suit, he gets in the Batmobile, yes. And then he just kind of drives past Danny DeVito's house and looks at him through the window.
Yep.
And then drives away.
Yep.
Like, it's just like, why'd you have to be Batman for that?
Yeah.
Why?
You could have just like put on a fedora and a trench coat and just walked by, and no one would have been the wiser. But
yeah, you're like calling so much attention to yourself.
You had to be Batman in the Batman car, going so loud past the window like 4 times.
Okay, we've talked about this before on this podcast, but I have a question to pose to you.
Okay.
What are your thoughts on the Wilhelm scream when it's executed like this, where it's just once being executed by like a nameless extra?
Yeah, I think that's fine. Like just having it be like, especially because it's this movie, which is already kind of silly, and especially because it's a goon, which is already kind of silly. Like Batman punching him and he flies off screen and he does Wilhelm scream. Like that's totally fine. But it's when they use it. It's not just a nameless extra. It has to be a specific kind of nameless extra. Right. Because if it's like a soldier and it does the Wilhelm scream, I'm like, that's kind of mean. That was a guy. But because it's in this movie, it's some fucking clown who's been running around in a circle for 10 minutes and now is gonna go punch Batman. It's okay that he does the Wilhelm scream because it's a fucking Batman goon and it doesn't matter.
Yeah. But like, yeah, and I think. Because, like, obviously the place it is worst is when it's, like, in Toy Story. Where it's, like, a character whose voice you know. And they, like, fall over and they go, ah! And you're like, fuck off with that.
And it's
that's
like,
nothing.
That's not even who that actor was.
I'm still not sure. I'm still torn. Because even in this movie where it's so elevated and so campy, it still just makes you think about the artifice in a really explicit way, you know? You recognize the sound and it's, like, this weird film in-joke where you'd be like, aha! The sound editors in this movie put that in on purpose because it's a thing. And it really explicitly is like, you're watching a movie put together by movie makers, you know?
I think that's only because we are aware of that because we're both film people, that's what you see it is. Regular people are just like, haha, funny scream. The funny scream that I know so well. Like, it's not it's not an in-joke. It's just kind of like a, haha, funny scream.
I suppose so. So, Danny DeVito is a character that is very much defined by his horniness in this movie.
Yeah.
Rightfully so, I think. He's living in a sewer his entire life and has flippers for hands. So,
he should understand that he can't be horny.
That,
that it's unacceptable. He can't be horny.
But yeah, and I mean, I feel like that's part of the whole thing, right? It's like all these three characters are people who have just like
are deeply horny.
Well, I mean, yeah, first of all, deeply horny, but like have been like so totally let down and wronged by like society, the society we live in.
Yeah.
That they've just decided to like fuck everything, right?
Yeah.
Catwoman's like, I'm gonna blow shit up and just do whatever the fuck I want, and Oswald Cobblepot's like, I'm gonna kill babies. That's my whole thing. Is I want to kill babies.
That's all I want to do. That's all I'm here for.
But I feel like sort of the sexuality angle of it, which I think is very much a product of what's his name, Daniel Waters, the writer.
Yeah.
More than it is of Tim Burton's, you know.
I mean, yeah, it's very much
aesthetic.
a thing in Heather's too.
Because yeah, Tim Burton.
I assume.
Tim Burton is not into sex very much at all.
Well,
in most of his other movies.
Tim Burton's not into sex. He does like. He likes. There's a theme of like one-dimensional, like sexy female characters, like
right.
the Ice
But they're
Princess.
always like ridiculed though for being so.
Well, yeah, which isn't good either, but it's there. Well, it's like what I always talk about is like in The Nightmare Before Christmas, like Sally's first design, she's like got like a hot bimbo body for no reason, and then
right.
they got rid of that because it was like, why the fuck does she need to look like
right.
this?
But like I feel like a common thread in his movies are like protagonists who are just not interested in sex from people around him who kind of want to give it to them, right?
Yeah.
Like really explicitly. I guess this is an exception, obviously. But like Edward Scissorhands, that woman like comes onto him, and Edward's just like afraid and terrified and wants nothing to do with it. Nightmare Before Christmas is like, oh, Sally is like really into him, but Jack is always like, oh, don't be so silly, not now. Like, oh, I've got important things to do. You know?
Jackson, hold on.
What?
And no part of The Nightmare Before Christmas is Sally like, hey Jack, do you want to fuck? That's not a part of it.
I'm not talking about sex explicitly. I'm talking about like romantic connection. You know what I'm saying. I don't think that was an insane thing of me to say.
Okay. Do
you disagree?
I do about The Nightmare Before Christmas because the whole thing is at the end of the movie is that they do get together romantically.
That's true.
They don't fuck, Jackson.
Okay. But what was my main point here? Because explicitly, I think in this script, sort of that sexuality comes out when people have decided to just be free of the restrictions of society, right?
Yeah.
Like Catwoman and the Penguin, both in their own distinct ways, their sexuality is really forward because they just don't give a fuck. Like, they feel this way, so they just express it really explicitly without any concern about what people think about it. And I don't know, and you can have a discussion about the difference between the way it's expressed between those two characters and whether Catwoman's like constant like coming on to like men around her is different than the Penguin doing the same, albeit in a very different way. But like, I don't know. There's a conversation to be had there. I don't know what it is, but
are we gonna have it or?
I don't know. I just don't know if I could really break it down because I don't know, because it's just different. I don't know. But the point that I'm getting at is that like is basically just that. It's like these characters are really freely expressive of their sexuality, and Batman is sort of much less so because he's still very much tethered, not completely obviously because he's fucking Batman and that's what he's chosen to do with his life, but like he's more tethered than the other ones are to like some semblance of society and order and structure, you know. So he's not. Go ahead.
Disagree a little bit. I think Batman is also guilty of being horny. It's more of like the brokenness of Bruce, like seeing the brokenness in Selina, you know? Like it's more of like we very much have the same issues of like being torn between doing whatever the fuck we want and still being a part of society. And so I feel like that's why that's why they're so drawn to each other, is because they're going through the same thing. Well, with with Cobblepot, I think it's more kind of like an incel. It's like he has been like completely rejected by everybody, and now he does have power. So now the thing that he wants is sex, because he's never had that kind of power over somebody before, you know?
Right. I think a lot of that can also be said of Catwoman, though. I mean, the like cultural coding is different. She's like a spinster, I guess, but like, it's almost the same thing, right? Like she's always wanted a romantic partner, but she's never really been able to land one. You know, she just can't land a man. Yeah. But then when she decides to just go fucking crazy, she decides to, like, now that she has this sort of, like, physical power over people, to make it as a sort of, like, sexual exchange, you know? It's not dissimilar the way these two people are using their power and their sexuality.
Yeah.
But one of the things I wanted to mention was that, like, that's very much how this is written. And, you know, because Catwoman being this very sexy character, like, thematically in this script, I think is important in the things that they're trying to get across.
Yeah.
And that is, you know, how it's written, absolutely. But Tim Burton, the way that he shoots it and the way that the movie is made, it's, like, obviously she's wearing this, like, latex catsuit, but the camera and the filmmaking of it is, like, not very male gazy at all, you know?
Yeah.
Like, very rarely, if ever, is the camera, like, ogling her, wants you to, like, look at her and be like, oh, check this out, look how hot she is, you know? It's just, like, the script content, explicitly, that is, like, this is a very sexual person, which is sort of what makes me feel the most strongly that this sort of thematic idea comes from the writer more than it comes from Tim Burton.
Yeah.
Because of that sort of dissonance in the storytelling, you know, which I just think is really, really interesting. And just to my earlier point that I don't think, like, Tim Burton is really very much interested in sexuality in his movies in a lot of cases.
Yeah. I guess I was trying to put my finger on why the Selena transformation does rub me a little bit the wrong way. Because we see her life, and we see that she's very unhappy with her life. Like, but, so when she, like, has this big change, and she decides, she just goes, fuck it, I hate all of this, I don't want any of this anymore. And she goes through, like, a complete change of herself. It's just that she immediately goes to, I'll just be in a sexy latex suit now, you know? Like, I wish... And then when she goes back to the office, she's, like, no longer wearing glasses and her hair isn't up anymore. Like, I feel like there were ways to make her sexy without, like, being super, like, obvious with it, you know?
Right.
Like, if she was just, like, way more confident in the way that she walked, or she didn't give a shit about what she wore anymore, or she didn't give a shit about her hair anymore. Like, it's less her conforming to what men find sexy, and more just, like, her not giving a shit about what's sexy, and that's what makes it sexy. I don't like that it's just like, oh, I hate what society has basically stuck me with, so I'm gonna, like, go outside of that and do something different. And I hate what that is, oh, I'm gonna take off my glasses and let my hair down and, like, wear skin-tight clothing. Like, I wish it was, like... just a different kind of sexy, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I think what you're saying is totally, I agree with you when it comes to, like, her office attire. It's like it's like Arrested Development with Judy Greer.
Yeah, it's
like,
literally
lets her hair down and takes off the glasses. But I think, I don't know, I think the latex cat suit is not like, oh, I'm going to conform to what society wants me to be, and I'm gonna wear this all the time. I don't think that's quite the same. I mean, and I don't know, and I think that there is a sort of ironic element to, like, her decision to do it, right? She's, like, sort of, like, reclaiming her own image, like, in the context of what she's meant to be, quote unquote, in society. Does that make sense?
Yeah, kind of.
Is what I think.
I get that, of, like, her specifically being sexy in order to, like, take advantage of men. Like, I get that. Yeah. And that's usually what the depiction of Catwoman is where she's, like, oh, I'm not, like, she literally does that in the movie with Batman. She's like, you hit me and I'm a woman.
Right.
And then she's like, oh, you're sexy. And then she, like, punches him or whatever.
Yeah.
Like that, that kind of thing. But,
yeah, and to me, I feel like what the idea is that, like, she is completely, like, a nihilist at this point. And she's not concerned about what is best for women, right? She's concerned about what she wants to do right now, you know? And that's what I think, what I like about that. You hit me, I'm a woman, oh no, is like not an especially like feminist take on that situation, but I don't think she gives a shit anymore, you know? Because it serves her needs in that moment.
Yeah.
And
well, I guess so. Are you saying that she's like completely taken herself out of the context of society as a woman?
Yeah.
I like that. I don't think that's what she does though, because then we have like the scene with her with like the security guards, and she's like, "You guys keep confusing your penises with your guns," and all that stuff. Like, I don't know.
That's the line.
Like,
yep.
I mean, that's the line that they wanted to write, but they didn't. But yeah, I don't know. I think it's a difficult thing to portray, and I think they do a pretty good job. Like you said, the like camera work is never like super male gazy or like degrading or anything. But I think it does speak to like, it's still a movie made by men, you know, and
right.
Even like it's layers. It's got layers. It's like Shrek. It's got layers.
It's exactly like Max Shrek. It has layers.
Yeah.
Sorry, let me think for a moment about what I was about to say. Just a second. Oh yeah, just sort of my closing remark on this whole deal is I think part of the issue is just that, like, the dialogue in this movie is very heightened, very cheesy, very one-linery. Mm-hmm. I think that style works the least with Catwoman than it does anybody else in this movie.
Yeah, definitely.
When Batman says, eat floor, I'm like, oh, fuck yeah, that's the coolest shit in the world.
Yeah.
But when Catwoman says, I am Catwoman, hear me roar, I'm like, I know it's kind of the same, but it's just, that's a lot more annoying than the other thing was.
I mean... Okay, but when Batman goes, eat floor, it's high in fiber, did you still still have that feeling?
Yeah, it's the best. Because she's like, I'm hungry, I haven't eaten all day. It's like, oh, you're hungry. Shapow, eat floor. It's high in fiber. It's like, fuck yeah.
Well, honestly, it's because it's a different kind of one-liner. Like,
right.
It wouldn't make sense for Selina's characters to be making one-liners, because why would she do that?
Well, she does all the time. It's just a different kind.
Yeah, it's like
you always are confusing your pistols with your privates. That's like one of them.
Well, because it's all, I'm girl.
Exactly, yeah.
And so with Batman, it's just like, I punched you, haha. Like, if Selina was just being like, I punched you, haha, then I'd be like, heck yeah.
I love my, one of my favorites is the newspaper headlines that just say Batman blows it. Which I think is so funny for some reason.
Batman fucked up, extra.
Batman sucks. Read all about it. I think that's so funny. I don't know why. Oh, whoa. Variety. The newspaper just sent me a notification on my phone saying NBC Universal CEO Steve Burke will depart in 2020. Thanks, Variety. I'm glad I know that.
None of those words formed a sentence.
Yeah, I know, that's the joke.
Oh, okay.
I love. Okay.
Good.
So
one.
and then I really like the scene where Bruce and Selina like go back to Bruce's house and like make out, because there's so much to it, and I think it's so funny. The greatest of which is right at the beginning when Selina goes, "So, girlfriend?" and he goes, "Sure. I mean."
Yeah.
And I think that's so funny. It's so stupid, but it's so good.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. He's got too much dorky energy that when he turns into Batman, it's like, okay, when he's Bruce Wayne, the dorky energy is great, but as soon as he turns into Batman, I'm just like, you're a fucking dork, dude.
But it's like, I like the dynamic that, like, they, like, are really into each other and they want to, like, get together, but then, like, as soon as they're about to, like, have sex, both of them independently are like, oh, fuck. I'm like a superhero. I can't just be going around having sex with people. Yeah, I can't just do that. And they're both like really anxious about it at the same time, and like neither of them like knows the other one. It's like this weirdly farcical.
Well, I just love both of them talking to Alfred, where he's like, "Can you tell her that I gotta go, but like I still like her, but like not in a like high school way?" And he's like, "You got it, sir." And then she walks to Selena, and Selena's like, I gotta go. Can you tell Bruce? And it's just very good.
And then later, the moment when they do find out each other's like secret identities, I think is a really fun, like just piece of screenwriting.
I like
how they
that
like
one too.
recognize that piece of dialogue from each other, and the way they react to it is like really weirdly subtle for a movie like this.
Yeah.
Where they just suddenly like they both like realize it, and they're just like, okay. So
do we have to fight now? Or
what do
what
we
I
do
love
now?
about that line is that she goes like, "Do I have to fight now?" And he's like, "Let's go outside." Because I think what he means is like, we'll talk about this in private. But what I want it to be is to be like, meet me out by the dumpster.
Yeah, let's throw down.
Yeah.
That's pretty good. I love Batman's stupid wings in that one shot.
For no reason, just that one time.
And it like glides off the building, but it's like this giant, clunky, like expensive looking apparatus just to be like, and I'm sure, you know, sound editing's wonderful, but I'm sure on set it was like, and they're like, okay, did you get it? Do you want to do that again? Somebody want to put it back?
I don't actually.
One of the things that I think is kind of interesting about this movie is how Bruce like never really seems to get more upset the more things develop. Like whenever he's like at Wayne Manor and just like hanging out and like doing research and making plans and stuff, he's always at like the same level. He's always like in a sweater with his hand on his chin, just being like, yeah, I think this'll, and then Oswald is, like he doesn't like ever get more frantic or more energetic. Like it feels like he's just always at the same level when he's like hanging around the house, which I think is kind of fun.
Well, it's like even when he's like when he's like ruining Cobblepot's whole thing, and he's playing the CD like it's a record player. He's just like, all right, I got it. I'm doing this now. And it's like, can you have a little bit of fun or like emotion? Hey, Bruce.
One of the things I like about this movie are the reoccurring goons. Because
like the little squad that goes around with Cobblepot.
Yeah, because there's the guy who was had the monkey box at the beginning, and he's around, and there's like the thick clown who has misgivings at the end and gets shot, and they're not like characters by any means. And if they were a different person, and if they were a different person each time, the movie wouldn't be worse for it. But like it's just nice that like you have like sort of a cast and his like posse that you can like kind of recognize from scene to scene.
Yeah.
You sure that Doug Jones plays one of the clowns?
Oh, okay.
The guy who does the vocab for like Abe Sapien and Shape of Water, that guy is one of the clowns. I don't know. That's just funny to me.
That's fun. Yeah.
He's the thin man in Pan's Labyrinth. And okay, so we got to talk about the Rocket Penguins. Because
I have nothing to say about them. They're perfect and I love them.
Yeah, they're the best. They're the best part of the whole movie are the Rocket Penguins. They're wonderful. Yeah. And like, I don't know. And I feel like we haven't given an appropriate amount of screen time to the Penguin in this episode.
Yeah, well, like, I mean, it's because everybody knows that Danny DeVito as the Penguin is great. Like, we don't need to...
And his delivery of, I am not a human being, I am an animal, cold-blooded, is so good. And I think about it all the time.
Specifically, I imagine Pikachu saying it.
And what's that line where he's like, oh, hell, why be biased? All the sexes are equal with their erogenous zones blown sky high. You're like, this movie's so insane. Yeah. Like, this is the craziest movie anybody's ever made. I'm trying to There's the line at the beginning where he's like giving a speech to the press, and he's like, "I was my parents' #1 son, but they treated me like #2." I think it's really good. He's great.
I know.
He's got so many great lines in this movie, and he delivers each one of them so perfectly.
Danny DeVito's great.
Enough
said.
And I mean, yeah, and the last thing I've written down is there's that bit where he's flying his little plane through the subway, and he like does that crazy barrel roll, and it's like a totally practical deal, and you're like not sure if it's a miniature or just like maybe it's made out of cardboard or something, but you're like, what is that? How'd they do that? Like, why does that look so good?
Someone just like picked up like a toy and like did it, and then like added them into it later.
But yeah, I don't know. I just love this movie's so cool. This
movie's a fun time.
I vibe on this movie.
It's always playing no matter what hotel you go to.
It's always on TBS somewhere. So I don't know, do you have any final thoughts, or do you want me to go into trivia time?
Yeah. I mean, I like this movie. I think it, for what it is and like what it like does with like the Batman character and what Tim Burton does like within like his own style within such like an established like piece of media, I think is really good. I don't think it's the perfect movie in the world, and I don't think it's the best Batman movie in the world, but it's a good time.
Hey, Adeline, did you know that many fans regard Michelle Pfeiffer's version of the character among their favorites?
Wow, I love facts that are 100% not opinions.
This is trivia.
I guess it's a fact that people have opinions, which I guess is fine.
Okay, this is one that had a very low like to dislike ratio and is so wild. I can only imagine it's just not true because I've never heard this corroborated anywhere else. Adelaide, did you know an early idea was to have the very large penguin birds who carry the penguin to his watery grave at the end of the movie be, quote, the elders, unquote, Lovecraftian beings whom the penguin and the circus group worshipped like gods?
Why?
I'm just like 98% that's not fucking true.
Yeah,
I don't think that's a thing.
I thought it was gonna be like they were gonna be real penguins, but then that didn't work, so we got like some fake, like those like little like puppets to do it.
There's some real penguins though.
Okay. No, they're eldritch horrors that the clowns worshipped.
But they worshipped like gods.
I think that's maybe wrong.
I think that's just not true. Okay, this one is... So, and something we didn't really touch on in this movie is all the weird, like, Old Testament, like, Moses Judaism, like, language in this movie with, like, the penguin getting, like, left in the basket in the river and, like, being discovered. Yeah. And, like, the whole, like, plague of, like, killing firstborn sons and stuff like that. And this piece of trivia is basically just pointing that out. But their verbiage is just really great. And I just want to read it to you. Yeah. Did you know... After Penguin has initially turned down Shrek's suggestion that he run for mayor of Gotham City, he starts to retreat back upstairs to his office. Shrek tails him, catching up with him at the foot of the stairs and whispering 3 temptations into his ear. The Penguin responds with, "You drive a hard bargain, Maxie. All right, I'll be mayor." And then the two look out the window over the city. Penguin cries, "Burn, baby, burn!" And Max gets a glittery, avaricious look in his eyes. The parallels with the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 4, are eerie. There's also the Moses in the bushes stuff going on in the beginning, along with 33 years later, and the Penguin's ultimate plan to kidnap all of Gotham's firstborn sons and baptize / drown them in a pool of toxic waste.
Yeah, you know. Just real quick, also.
Yeah, uh-huh.
Well, because they can't tell you the ones that make sense because you already knew those. They had to make up one that's only kind of works.
That's something that I've heard people say, is that they're really explicit about the fact that they like go out of their way to point out that the Penguin is 33 years old, which is how old Jesus was when he died, presumably.
Yeah.
Which I think is valid. I think there's a reason they put that number 33 like there as opposed to a different number. But I just, like, these are always so professional, and this one's, like, the parallels with the Gospel of Matthew are eerie. And there's also the Moses in the bushes stuff going on in the opening.
And the fact that they say stuff, like, they don't even care. They're like, that so stuff, good. Whatever. It's like,
and I like that they describe it as eerie, as if it wasn't an intentional parallel.
Yeah, no, it's like the haunted Mickey Mouse cartoons. It's like, oh, spooky.
Do you want to hear a 1-star review of Batman Returns, Adeline?
I do.
So this review comes from Letterboxd.com. This person gives Batman Returns 1/2 of 1 star, and they say, "To be honest, this film is actually pretty good." Said no one ever.
Wow. Fucking got him.
Got he? Oh, he fooled you
him.
Good. Ooh, he got you. Ooh, he got you good.
The fucking toilet, Timber, and suck on that shit. What
no
you put
one
in the
likes
toilet,
this
I put on
movie.
my mantle, Tim. Because you put this movie right in the toilet.
What you treated this movie like number 1, but I treat it like number 2.
Gotti.
I just did the same joke you did, but I used a different line. And it's still funny, I hope.
Gotti.
Gotti.
God, I'm
Fuck
so
you.
good. There's a camera there. There's a camera over there. You're on prank, son.
You've been gotten.
Fuck you.
Okay, cool.
My name is Adeline McMurray.
Oh, that's right. Oh, yeah, no, I'm Jackson and Adeline McMurray. Fuck, I forgot to do that. I don't know.
This
Whatever.
has been No Nerds Allowed. It's over now. Go home.
Yeah, I was thinking that was going to be as we were playing out, but then I remembered we forgot to say our names. So now
Yeah,
I
you
don't know
forgot.
what we're going to do.
The quintessential thing that we do.
Yeah, the main part of it. I guess this is now the play out.
Get out of here. There's nothing left for you.
What a disaster of a podcast we run. We have like one thing that we do every episode, and somehow we can't even get that right.
We can't even do that. All right.